Okay, everyone, welcome back to Realis Historia again, and this is the first of the three dictators. I've separated into three separate videos, and let me introduce you to Napoleon, and we will go through his journey from democracy to dictatorship. Now, by the start of the First French Revolution in 1789, yes, the first one, another episode for later, Napoleon had risen to the rank of lieutenant in the Royal Artillery. He switched sides and then left for his homeland Corsica, where he fought for the French revolutionary forces there. In 1796, Napoleon returned to command the French revolutionary forces during the Italian campaign of the French Revolutionary Wars. He was highly successful against the one of the superpowers of the time, Austria-Hungary, resulting in their defeat and his return to Paris in triumph. A few years after that, in 1799, Napoleon's political career started. He took advantage of the fame he had gained from the Italian campaigns and other battles he fought for the French Revolutionary War to stage a coup in 1799 to overthrow the current revolutionary government. Now, here's where another dictator similarity comes into play, because Napoleon, just like good old modern-day Putin, loved his referendums, especially a good old rigged referendum. So in January of 1800, not long after the coup, Napoleon had a referendum run to firstly adopt a new constitution where he is named first consul, or confirmed first consul, for 10 years. It was claimed that 99.94% of the vote voted yes, and, well, the other 0.06 voted no, worked out to results of about 3 million in favour and 1,567 opposed. However, in reality, and I'll show you some of this information later, only 1.5 million people turned out, let alone the 3 million. I think you would agree these are rather Putinesque referendums, very similar to Putin's referendum in the Ukrainian regions, where he only occupies half of them to start with, but 99% of the population turn out, and 99% of those population vote for joining Russia. Very, very Putinesque. So maybe he picked up Napoleon's playbook somewhere. Anyway, 2 years later, the Treaty of Amiens was signed, which was a peace treaty between Great Britain and France, but it essentially ended the French Revolutionary Wars. And with that, Napoleon took his referendum show on the road again, and in 1802, a further referendum was held. The referendum was to approve a new constitution, and in that constitution, Napoleon was declared consul for life and given sweeping powers, essentially making him a dictator for life. Now, apparently, and I do say this with a very large pinch of salt, 3.6 million people turned out to vote, and again, surprisingly, 99% of people approved the changes to the Constitution. Or should I say, unsurprisingly. This was a new age now. Napoleon's regime was pervasive in society. Unlike 1800, this ballot was not a secret ballot, and at risk of offending the regime and the consequences thereof, I can imagine that people voted as they do in Russia now, the way that the regime would like them to vote. Now, in 1804, Napoleon decided to make it official, and under the guise of threats to the revolution and assassination attempts against Napoleon, he decided to institute an imperial system based on the Roman system. And a referendum was put to the people, and you may or may not be surprised to hear that 99% of the people again approved the Bonaparte family becoming hereditary, I hate that word, heirs to the French throne, basically. making Napoleon the Emperor of France. A coronation ceremony was held, of course, in the great Cathedral of Notre Dame. Pope Pius VI attended, and this ceremony was where Napoleon infamously crowned himself instead of being crowned by, say, the Pope or Archbishop or so forth. So there you have it. From democracy, well, sham democracy as it may have been, to monarch, emperor, dictator, as it were. And how odd this is. I mean, Napoleon originally started with a complete dislike or hatred of the monarchic system. And here he is a monarch. In fact, I've got a couple of comparisons to show you. Here is King Louis XVI, who was overthrown and executed. And here is Napoleon. And Louis XVI and Napoleon. I mean, I suppose the saying goes, power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. In the end, he became what he despised. And of course, it was after this, with complete and absolute power, that the destruction started in Europe. And this is the same with the other dictators who got here this way, which you will see as I present the next two. Now, just before we move on, just wanted to let you know I was thinking of including a section here to discuss these highly one-sided election or referendum results. I wanted to examine the high mathematical and theoretical improbability of results being incredibly one-sided towards one side or another. In particular, I wanted to introduce you to the work of a 1937 Swedish political scientist, Herbert Tingsten, who wrote a book in 1937 entitled Political Behavior Studies in Election Statistics. Now, in this book, he discussed the law of dispersion, or formulated the law of dispersion. This law talks about the effect of a high voter turnout or low voter turnout on the equality or inequality of political participation in that result. It certainly relates to two of these three dictators, but it would have taken too long for me to examine it and show how it applies to this video. So I'm going to create a shorter video following this one regarding the law of dispersion. I'm going to call it Examining the Law of Dispersion, and I do encourage you to watch it. Okay, quick note, I did change the format of these videos after I completed all the sound captures for Napoleon. I will now be doing the three individual dictators, and then I will be doing a video on the law of dispersion. So please keep watching for the next video, Hitler, which will then be followed by Putin.